What's life giving you today? Welcome back to Moving with Meaning, the podcast, where actions have meaning, words have meaning, and we open up the conversations to discover what's your next move. I'm your host, Crystal. This episode, we have a guest, and I'm just so excited to talk about the insight she's about to come at you with. But first, we need to set that theme. So let's go ahead and do that. The word of the day is release. That sure sounds refreshing, doesn't it? This is the action or process of enabling an escape from some kind of confinement. Being confined isn't fun, and it can be incredibly disheartening when you feel or think you are doing everything to free yourself from past traumas or avoiding triggers. That's enough talking for me. How about we go ahead and introduce our guest? And there's no one better to do that than herself. Let's welcome Anne without an E. Why don't you give the people a bit of background about yourself and what you are going to talk to us about today?
Thank you, Crystal. My name is Hince, yes, without an E. I'm no one special, but I have developed a fairly unique ability, a superpower, you might say, where I can put my focused awareness inside my body and release tension in my connective tissue and the bones. This ability has developed over time. It did not happen overnight, and we'll talk about how I did it. It all started because I was determined to be a calm mother, because I wasn't on the inside. I was anxious, reactive, emotional, and tense, and I did not want to be. So I set out to change, and in the process of finding inner peace, which was my goal, physical changes happened too. Notably, my skull bones shifted as I released really deep tension in my head and neck. And I've grown 3/4 of an inch in my 50s because of the release of the burden of my past that I had been carrying around for so long.
Oh, wow. That's deep. Growth on both levels, right?
Right. I call it literal personal growth.
Awesome.
So there we go, Crystal. Back to you.
Well, and I want to know, tell me a little bit about that. What are some of the inner growth that you kind of went through to kind of help release some of those tensions?
Well, it started out with me having a business altercation with a couple of other mothers. And my mind just spun out of control because these women were not like me. They were self-confident, self-assured women. And I was a scared mother on the inside, and they told me I'd done something wrong. So my mind spun out of control for 3 days. I could not stop it just spinning over everything that had happened and everything that I could have done differently but didn't. And it was at the end of those 3 days that I realized, okay, this is a little bit like how I would react when my dad would tell me I'd done something wrong in childhood. For me, that was the first opening that maybe my childhood was still affecting me to this day. And so we need something like that, right, to start us on our journey. And for me, that was it.
Oh, wow. Wow. So that's interesting, because I think that's a lot of what a lot of folks deal with today, is almost how they've interpreted their parenting or the parenting style of their parents. And it kind of impacted our self-esteem in some kind of way. And we've basically started carrying that on with us into our future. So I think you put together a practice called shadow work.
Yes, it is called shadow work because it's looking at our past. It's looking at our shadow, which is actually stored inside of us. So the first thing is realizing that it's there, right? Realizing that your past is affecting you to this day, but most of us don't realize it because it's in our subconscious mind. It's just part of who we are. So we need something, and maybe this podcast is what's going to be it for you, right? Yeah. The listener, realizing that we really are reliving our past over and over again. And to change our future, we need to change who we are right now. And that entails looking at our past, opening it up, and looking at it deeply and letting the energy that is stuck in there that is our shadow, letting that energy go so that we can be different and move on. So yes, it's called shadow work. I call it inner work because we're looking inside of ourselves.
Okay. Better word usage on my part. I apologize. Okay. Sounds good. So tell us about those techniques that you use and give us a few examples if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, the first one I use, which was because a doctor had done it with me, he realized I was incredibly stressed, and I shouldn't have been because I was a stay-at-home mother with 2 healthy young boys, but I was incredibly stressed still on the inside. And he recognized that, and he happened to know this technique that is called EFT, which is short for Emotional Freedom Technique. Mm-hmm. It's also called tapping, because what we're doing is we're tapping on certain places in our body as we're talking something through. And the tapping is what allows the energy to release from the nervous system. So you don't have to have a great depth of awareness. You don't have to, be spiritual or anything to do tapping. It's very easy, it's very simple, and it's free. So anyone can do it. It just looks a little weird because you're tapping on yourself. So he tapped with me about my mother's death because I had found her dead when I was 19 on the bathroom floor. And so he tapped with me about that because it was like I was in my late 30s at that point, and I had not released any of that emotion from that when I was 19. So he had me talk through that morning when I found her while we were tapping on these certain meridian points on our body. And I allowed the tears to flow that had been stuck inside. And after that 15 minutes, I realized I could tell the story of her death without the tears there anymore. That's when I realized how powerful it was. But like you, I kind of have a technical background, and I wanted to go home. I did go home, and I looked it up online, and I learned everything I could about it because, as I said, it was given away for free by someone who used to be a chemical engineer. So that actually made me feel more confident about it. But I wanted to try it out. So here's an example of what I tried it out with. I didn't want to go really deep. I just wanted to try it like on an everyday thing. And I had a 17-year-old cat at home at the time, and his kidneys were starting to fail. And I'd been told I needed to give him a daily saline shot. So an injection of saline solution, and I hated needles. And first time I gave him that shot, my hand was shaking so badly. It was just so stressful. So I thought, okay, let me try this technique out on this fairly simple thing. So I tapped about it. I tapped about my hand shaking. I tapped about my fear of hurting my cat. And I tapped about all the memories I had from all the injections I had had in my past, because I'd had many. And the next day, when I gave him that shot, the needle just slid right in. All the fear that had been sitting inside of me the day before had totally disappeared.
Okay.
So that's when I started using it.
So wait, are you saying tapping or talking? Like
you're tapping as you're talking.
Oh, really? So that's what I was gonna say. Are we physically like? So let's say like you're tapping on a desk, like a rhythm. Is that what it is while you're talking?
Yes. Well, you're tapping on specific places on the body. So the places you tap on, they're the same each time. They're the ends of meridian systems. Okay. So a little bit like acupressure.
Yeah.
In that regard. Yeah. And it's the tapping as you're telling the story that releases the energy from the story.
I see. It reminds me of my kids. They play band. So it reminds me of the metronome a little bit there. But yeah. Okay. I'm following you. Okay.
So I started to use that every day. I started to notice when I was becoming emotional, like frustrated or angry or sad or whatever. And I would tap, telling myself the story, I'm feeling frustrated right now. I'm frustrated because this person did that or that happened, whatever happened. And the tapping would allow me to come back to peace during the day. So I realized things were changing and life was becoming more peaceful, but I wanted it to go faster. So I wrote down every emotional memory I could think of from my childhood. So all the big traumas, all the little traumas, all the humiliations, all the teasing I'd been through, everything. And I tapped through one big event or one belief or something each night for about an hour to an hour and a half each night. And that's when things really started to shift.
That is so cool. And I want to pause real quick because you're talking out loud. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, yes, you can be talking in your mind.
Yes.
But yeah, the words are there for sure. Yes.
Okay.
They don't have to be. They don't have to be. If you're triggered in the moment, right? If you're going through something where you are feeling all those emotions, because you're just using the words to bring the feelings back into the body.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's something I promote a lot is to speak aloud. It's so uncomfortable, but even just when you learn new languages, speaking out loud helps bring that or manifestation inside you out. It really does help. So
right.
I can see it. So yeah, I can see it. I can see it applying in so many different cases right now. It's my mind's on fire. But keep going, keep going. I don't want to stop you.
What I realized over time, I didn't know this to begin with, but what I realized is that as you're doing this work, your subconscious mind is opening up. So more memories pop up, more details of more memories pop up, which had been stuck in your subconscious in our body. And so my self-awareness deepened. I became more aware of my emotions. And then I became aware of the physical sensations underneath the emotions. So when we're feeling frustrated, we're actually holding tension in our body in certain places. That's why we come up with the word frustration, right? We're describing those feelings, putting the word frustration to it. So we can reverse that process. So we can become aware of the tension, how we're holding our body when we're feeling a certain emotion. So I became aware of that. Now, I hadn't been aware of that to begin with. I had to do this work with EFT to expand my self-awareness. But once I became aware of those physical sensations, I didn't feel like I needed to use EFT anymore because I could just focus on the sensations. So I taught myself to do that. I was standing at the kitchen sink one day doing the dishes. And I was thinking a thought. Now, this takes some practice to actually be able to catch a thought. But I was thinking a thought that had some emotion involved, which could be something like, I'm afraid of making a phone call. So I noticed that thought, and then I wanted to feel those feelings. So I noticed there was fear there. So then I'd check in, okay, so where is that fear in my body? And for me, fear is more in my solar plexus, my stomach area. I wanted to feel the feelings because I've been in a group and the kind of guru in the group every week, it's saying, you don't have to meditate. It's all about feeling your feelings. But I had to learn how to do that. And I realized if I moved, I would lose my focus on that fear. Or if I took a deep breath, I would lose my focus on the fear. So I had to hold myself like a statue. So I would notice this fear. I could feel it as tension in my stomach. And I would stop and hold myself like a statue and talk to the tension. So I would say things like, okay, I can feel you right there. I can feel this fear sitting in my stomach right there. I just want to feel you. I don't want to change you. I don't want you to release. I mean, really, I do. But I would talk to it. And I just want to feel the fear. We suppress our feelings so much.
Yes.
Those feelings don't know how to be felt. So it took some practice of doing this. But I would feel that fear. I'd have to take a deep breath, obviously, after a while. And I would think the thought again, okay, I'm afraid of making this phone call. Feel the fear again. And I would notice it would have gone down a little bit. The fear wouldn't have been as intense. So then I would do the same thing. Hold myself like a statue while I'm feeling this fear. And then it would release a little bit more. And I would do it over and over again with the same thought until there was no longer any fear there. At which point it becomes easy to make the phone call.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. You could see, okay, guys, she can see me and my mouth is in awe. Like it's an awe moment for me right now because I'm relating this to masseuses who really massage your body and they can tell where all the tension is, where, like you said, where you carry your tension and they try to release it. Now, obviously, they're releasing it temporarily because it's going to come back if you don't do this particular type of technique, which is to conquer your feelings and accept them and allow them to release, if you will, right? So I'm picking up what you're putting down, Anne.
Okay, it really does release it from the body. So as you do this over and over again, you don't react in the same way to the same thing. You notice over time that you're less reactionary because you've actually changed physically on the inside. So yeah, as time goes by, then you just stop reacting the way you used to begin with. So I used to be, I would call myself highly strung because I used to have PTSD. And that's gone because I just don't react the same way. Actually, my mind can be pretty quiet. I can catch thoughts even as they start now, which just, even me saying that 20 years ago, I had no idea what I would be talking about, but
yeah.
But it is possible. So then I started using that technique every day instead of doing the EFT.
Wowzer. This is good. This is good stuff right now. It's amazing the different perspectives from different professionals or different practitioners, how this all works and how the different techniques that they use is so beneficial just from a growth mentality. And just to be open to that is what we want to do here. Now, are those the 3 techniques that you took us through already, or have we hit the other?
Those are 2. So
okay.
The EFT and then the feelings. Okay. Now, as I was doing the feelings, I would lay on the sofa at night and just bring like collective traumas to mind, things like 9/11, and just allow those sensations to be felt. So the same way, hold myself like a statue and allow the tension to release. At some point during that process, I realized I could keep my awareness inside my body after the tension had released, which was crazy to me. I'd never experienced before. It felt very different. I could tell the difference between outside my body and inside my body. And the way I try and explain it is, imagine you have a toothache or a stomach ache. You can feel, you can sense with your senses, not thinking mind, but feeling mind. You can feel where that pain is coming from. But once the pain has disappeared and you no longer have that toothache or that stomach ache, you can't feel inside anymore where that pain was. I found that I could.
Yeah, I was going to say there's something like that when a particular part of your body is cut off, you could still feel as if, like your foot, you can still feel the itch, but your foot's not there. Is that similar to what we're talking about?
It is similar.
Okay, yes. Okay. I'm here.
Yes. So then I started to do the same thing. I moved my awareness around inside and I noticed I could feel tension or no tension. I could feel the difference between one and the other. So I would focus on the tension and do the same thing that I did to the frustration. I could focus on the tension, hold myself like a statue and just allow it to release. And it would. And then I'd do it again and again and again. And over time, many, many months, I actually got my awareness inside my head. For me, that was hugely eye-opening because the pain and the tension inside my head that I had not been aware of was unbelievable. And that's when I realized how much tension we hold inside that we really are not aware of. But this process, these 3 techniques, open up our awareness to it, and the techniques allow us to release it. So I just kept working, and over time I could feel my skull bones relax. And that's when I had the x-rays taken, and just as part of my orthodontic routine. I didn't do it for a reason. I just looked at them and saw that things had changed, bones had changed. I mean, I knew how powerful it was, right? Because I could feel the bones relax, but to actually see them on x-rays was very validating.
Yes. And I saw this YouTube. So, Anne, can you give the listeners the time frame for when you took the first x-ray to the second one?
Yeah, there was 8 years difference between the 2 x-rays. And the last one was a couple of years ago, and so much more has changed in the last 2 years. I'd love to get another x-ray taken. I've actually tried, but haven't found someone who'll do it yet.
Okay, no worries. But what that last little bit that you said there, it sounds like continuous improvement, continuous growth. We never stop. So I love it. I do have a few questions if you're done.
Yeah, please go on. Yeah.
Okay. As an introvert myself, which I have heard is a personality reaction to some kind of trauma, what would you say to that person as far as which inner work technique would you have them help work through why they've kind of retracted to themselves?
Well, I would always suggest people start with EFT. I mean, I would say I'm still an introvert. I'm not as much as I used to be because I'm now peaceful in most situations. Mm-hmm. But yes, there's normally fear involved in being an introvert, right? So you have to look at those times when you are afraid now, but also then bring up memories of times in the past where something happened. Like maybe you did speak up one time and you got shut down, or someone humiliated you. So you would go back to those memories and look at them, because they're just energy that is stuck in the body. Those memories, we sometimes think those memories are going to overwhelm us, right? Or they're just going to be too hard to look at. But once you realize it's just energy that's stuck in your body, all you have to do is find a way to release it. Then it becomes easier to do that inner work.
Gosh, yeah. And I think this applies to the single mom, the one who's having to do all of the jobs, to be the counselor, the tutor, and the comforter, the chauffeur, and all of the activities as far as raising. That can be traumatic as well. Even though you're being successful in doing all those things, you still have to go through, I guess, what we're talking about now is just this EFT, because we have to release that tension that we build up.
Yeah, and we put it in words. I mean, sounds overwhelming, right? Yeah. So then we would tap on, I am overwhelmed. I just feel so overwhelmed. Those would be the words that we would use as we did EFT. Gosh. And then the details of that story. Why are we overwhelmed? Well, because we're doing so much, because we're afraid of doing one thing or another. So it's like layer by layer by layer.
Yes.
Your subconscious opens up to you as to the reason why things are the way they are. And then you can release that.
Okay, let me ask this question. And I like what you said, because you're focusing on the present. And I think a lot of people live in the past or they live in the future. They never live in the present. A lot of what you're proposing now is drawing on past trauma to help you in the present. But let's say, for example, someone is dealing with something today, an abusive relationship or toxic workplace. It's happening right now. Would these same techniques still work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like I gave the example with my cat, right?
Yep.
That was something right now, but it also had components of the past, because I was so afraid of injections from all of the ones I'd had in my past, which is what you were saying. That part of me was living in that fear in the past, but yet I was in the present. Mm-hmm. So yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then lastly, tell me, what is the difference between therapy and inner work?
Well, it can sometimes be the same thing.
Okay.
Right? So some therapists will have you talk through your past, mm-hmm. which is looking inside of you, because our past is stored inside of us in our subconscious mind, which is in our body.
Yep.
So that's what people do in therapy. In my experience, the tapping, right, it's the physical tapping using EFT on those meridian points makes it so much faster to release that energy, because we're actually doing something physically to the nervous system of the body as we're talking through our past. So we're essentially kind of doing therapy with ourselves, mm-hmm. but the tapping releases it faster.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Ann, you know what? You gave us some real good golden nuggets there. And how we do on this podcast, we add some ketchup just to recap. So why don't you go ahead and give us some of your golden nuggets you want us to take away?
Okay, I've got 4 things to share. So we've already talked about this one, but it's really important to realize that emotions are simply stuck energy. We don't have to act on them. We don't want to suppress them either. What we want to do is feel them and allow the energy to release, which is what these techniques were doing. Second, it's so easy to blame others or want others to change, but our part in anything that happens is how we feel about it. If we want someone else to change, it's because we feel uncomfortable with some part of them. We can work with that discomfort if we can find it. We can take responsibility for it. We can use one of these techniques we've talked about to feel it and let the energy pass through, so that we can get to the point where we are no longer triggered by them, and we can remain at peace regardless of what they do. 3, and I love this one, There is a greater depth to life than you know right now. I can say that because I've been at the place where I didn't experience that depth to life, but now I do. So now I can feel sounds. Sounds move right through my body. I can feel into colors. I can sense the energy and breathing of others as they speak, which helps me know if they're telling the truth or not. I can understand why things happen and see the repeated patterns in people's lives, and it makes life so much more interesting. And then the last one is the first step to all of this is noticing when we are emotional, to stand back, to come to the present and say, oh, look at me, I'm starting to get frustrated, rather than actually being frustrated. Then you have the opportunity to work with that frustration using one of the techniques we mentioned. So start noticing your emotions during the day.
Wow, that hits on two things. The second to last was empathy, an empathetic person. And last one, anxiety. That's exactly what I do when I feel the anxiety starting to build up in me. So I think this is hitting on multiple points, and I just wanted to call those out for others to interpret this and to use these skills, because those are great points, and I'm relating to them just in my own way. I love it. Good. Well, I want to share something with the listeners before we close. I know you and I had a brief discussion about spirituality, which I realized at that time meant something completely different to the both of us. And I hope you would be interested in joining back with me just to discuss that. So you don't have to answer that now, but I wanted to throw that out, and hopefully we can have you back and have another very good discussion and engaging conversation about that.
That would be lovely.
Awesome. Well, that's the episode today. I thoroughly enjoyed exploring the shadow work or inner work, and am very intrigued by a few examples of the above. Are any of you struggling with putting in inner work and conquering your shadows? What's keeping you from going there? How about which of the coping techniques Anne presented that intrigued you the most? Even if you feel you are free of the shadows, I'd still love to hear how you took the steps to finally free yourself. I love it all, and so will someone else. Before we let you go, Anne, why don't you go ahead and remind the people who you are, where they can find your resources or reach out to you.
Thank you. I do have a book that goes into these steps in detail, and it's called A Pathway to Insight. And recently I also put out a workbook that goes into your shadow. It'll ask you all the questions about your past so that it'll bring up everything that you need to work on. I also have my website, which is annehince.com, and the x-rays are on there so you can see what this does. And I'm fairly active on Facebook, which is Anne Hince Wisdom, and I have a YouTube channel, and I post a video a week.
Awesome sauce. I'll make sure to include all of Anne's resources and connections in the episode description, as well as on my website resources page, movingwithmeaning.com. Make sure you guys subscribe to the show, Moving with Meaning the podcast, and tap that alert bell so you know when these episodes drop. We're on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify. If I get enough downloads and follows, I might be inspired to drop a few episodes in a single week. So please share, like, repost, and follow. We are creating a community. Quick housekeeping before you go. Follow me on Instagram at movingwithmeaning82 and my Facebook page, Moving with Meaning. Also connect with me on LinkedIn. I do dabble a bit in TikTok at Crystal B. Clark. Links are in the episode. Alrighty. I'm Crystal on Moving with Meaning, the podcast, reminding you to take it one step at a time. All moves have meaning. Check y'all later.